I've always loved driving at night. No traffic, no noise, no distractions, just an empty road, calm music, and a sense that the world is asleep around you. But after one night 2 years ago, I stopped going for late-night drives entirely. Because that night, I came across someone on the road who shouldn't have been there. Someone who was waiting for me. It happened in November. I was coming home from my friend Tyler's place. It was around 1:45 a.m., and the rain had been coming down in sheets for hours. The kind of rain that makes everything look blurry, even with the wipers going full speed. My drive home takes about 20 minutes, and most of it is through long stretches of countryside. No streetlights, no houses, nothing. About halfway through the drive, I noticed something up ahead, just a dark shape on the road. At first, I thought it was an animal, like a deer lying down. But as I got closer, my stomach dropped. It wasn't an animal. It was a person. They were standing perfectly still in the middle of the road, facing me. I slowed down immediately, my tires sliding slightly on the wet pavement. I flashed my high beams, hoping maybe it was someone who needed help. But instead of reacting like a normal person, the figure didn't move at all, not even an inch. They just stood there, staring straight at my car, completely motionless. Something about the way they were standing didn't look right. Their posture was too stiff, their arms hanging perfectly straight by their sides. Even from inside my car, I felt this sudden wave of dread, like I had driven into something I shouldn't have. I stopped about 30 feet away. For a few seconds, I just sat there, watching them through the windshield. Then the person slowly stepped forward. One step, then another, then another. Their movements were so deliberate, so controlled, it didn't feel human. Like they were forcing themselves to walk. I honked the horn, panicking, hoping they'd snap out of whatever they were doing. But they didn't flinch, not even a little. That's when lightning flashed across the sky for a split second, just long enough for me to finally see the person's face. His eyes were completely wide, like unnaturally wide. His mouth hung open slightly, not like he was breathing heavy, but like someone had pulled his jaw down and forgot to put it back. And his clothes were soaked, sticking to his body. His skin looked pale and wrinkled, like he'd been in the water for hours. Something was wrong. Seriously wrong. I reversed the car, but the man suddenly broke into a full sprint toward me. Not a normal sprint. His head stayed perfectly still, locked onto me, while his body moved in these jerky, broken motions. His arms didn't swing. His shoulders were stiff. He ran completely straight like a video game glitching. I slammed the car into drive and floored it. He was getting closer fast. His footsteps made no sound, which was impossible on wet pavement. It was like he wasn't even touching the ground. I looked in the rearview mirror as I sped away, and he was still running after me, full speed, not slowing down. Finally, after what felt like forever, he faded into the darkness behind me. I didn't stop until I got home. When I got out of the car, I noticed muddy handprints on the rear of my trunk. Big handprints, like someone had reached out to grab my car. But that wasn't the worst part. The police came the next morning and checked the area. And they found something, a pair of wet footprints leading from the road into the woods. But the footprints weren't normal. They were barefoot, and they were spaced way too far apart. Like whoever made them could take strides nearly 4 feet long. No one ever found the man. No one knows who he was. And every time it rains at night, I can't help but think about how he moved, how he didn't make a sound, and how he almost reached my car. I haven't driven at night since. I've been camping alone for years. It started as a weekend escape from work, just a way to disconnect, breathe, and remember what silence feels like. I never had some deep wilderness training or survival background. I just liked the quiet. I liked the way the forest swallowed the noise of everyday life. No cars, no neighbors, no notifications, just the rustle of leaves, the buzz of insects, and the sense that the world slowed down around me. But last summer, I learned something important. Silence isn't peaceful. Silence is what happens right before something bad happens. And when you're alone, miles away from the nearest person, that realization hits different. I drove to a small forest reserve about 2 hours from my town. It wasn't a national park or anything well-maintained, just a patch of land with a few old trails and a fire pit left behind by whoever came before me. That's exactly why I liked it. No families with loud kids, no hikers yelling down the trail, no drunk teenagers pretending to camp. Just me, the woods, and a night sky I never got to see at home. I reached the area around 6 p.m. The place was as quiet as I hoped. No cars, no campers, not even birds by the time I parked. I set up my tent near a clearing surrounded by tall, thin pines, the kind that sway even when there's barely any wind. By 8:30, I had a small fire going. I cooked a cheap freeze-dried meal, drank a bottle of water, and sat back to enjoy the night. The forest had that heavy stillness I love, when the air feels thick and all you hear is your own breathing. But around 10:45 p.m., I noticed something strange. The woods went dead silent. Not quiet, silent. No crickets, no leaves, no animals, no wind. Just a sudden, unnatural stillness, like the entire forest was holding its breath. I try to brush it off. Animals settle down sometimes. The night gets colder and everything slows. That's normal, but something about it felt wrong, like the silence was directed at me, like I had stepped into a place I wasn't supposed to be. By 11, I crawled in my tent and zipped up for the night. I fell asleep quickly, which is unusual for me on the first night. But the next part won't remember with perfect clarity, because it still wakes me up sometimes. Around 2 a.m., I snapped awake. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it, breathing, slow, heavy, measured, and it was right outside my tent. It wasn't animal breathing. Animals snort, sniff, grunt, or huff. This sounded like someone trying to inhale quietly, but failing. Deep, warm breaths, so close I could feel them through the nylon. My entire body went cold. I told myself it was a deer, or a bear, something curious. But then the breathing changed. It became controlled, like someone trying not to breathe too loudly. That's when fear set in. I lay completely still. I even tried to quiet my own breathing so I could hear better. After about 10 seconds, I heard footsteps. Not heavy stomps, but soft, deliberate steps on pine needles, moving slowly, carefully, like whoever or whatever was trying not to make noise. They circled my tent once, then again. Then the steps stopped directly where my head was. I stared at the fabric of the tent barely inches from my face. That's when something pressed against it. At first, it was small, like someone poking the tent with a finger. Then the pressure grew, and suddenly, a face pressed into the fabric. Not a hand, not a paw, a full human-shaped face. I could make out the forehead, the curve of a nose, and the outline of lips. The breathing grew heavier, vibrating the nylon slightly with each exhale. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I kept waiting for it to speak, to say something, to identify itself. Anything would have been better than what it did next. It whispered, but it wasn't words. It wasn't even language. It was just a long, shaky exhale, like it was smelling me, like it was trying to taste my breath through the tent. My stomach twisted. I felt dizzy with fear. I reached slowly for the pocket knife I always keep next to me. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely grip it. I held it against my chest, ready to swing if the thing tried to come inside. The face slowly slid down the tent wall, like whoever or whatever was out there was crouching. The breathing never stopped. Then I heard the sound that haunts me more than anything. The zipper, being tugged, slowly, quietly. Whoever it was knew how tents worked. They tugged it with such careful, deliberate movements that I knew instantly. This wasn't an animal, and that realization broke me. I panicked. I screamed without meaning to. Just a raw, terrified scream. The moment I did, everything went silent. Completely silent. It stayed like that for a full second. Then, it ran. The thing outside took off into the trees with frantic, uneven footsteps. Not like a human, not like an animal, something in between. Like its limbs weren't moving the way they were supposed to. Like it was dragging one side of its body. The sound faded fast into the forest. I stayed frozen in that tent for the rest of the night. Knife in hand, sleepless, shaking. Every small noise felt like something coming back. Every minute dragged like an hour. By sunrise, I forced myself to step outside. The first thing I noticed were the footprints. They were everywhere, circling the tent, approaching from different angles, stopping right where the face had pressed against the wall. But the prints weren't normal. They were too long, too narrow, almost stretched, like someone had taken human feet and pulled them from the toes. The heels were sharp, almost pointed. The toes were uneven lengths. The arch of each foot dipped unnaturally low into the dirt. No barefoot human has feet like that. I tried convincing myself they were distorted animal tracks, but the shape was unmistakably human. Just wrong. The forest rangers came later that day after I reported strange activity. I didn't tell them the truth, just said I heard noises at night. I didn't want to sound insane. They searched the area for an hour. Nothing. No people. No animals. No broken branches. Nothing disturbed except around my tent. One ranger asked, "You sure you were alone out here?" I didn't answer. That night, I didn't go back to camp. I booked the cheapest motel I could find, 20 miles away, and still felt watched the entire night. I haven't camped alone since. I still think about it sometimes, about the face pressing through the fabric, about the breathing that felt inches from my skin. But the part that scares me the most isn't any of that. It's the zipper, because something intelligent was out there, something that knew how to get inside, something that wanted to. And whatever it wasn't human. I used to think living alone was peaceful, a kind of quiet independence people brag about. No roommates slamming doors, no late-night arguments, no one using your things. Just silence, freedom, and space that belongs only to you. But silence can turn into something else. Something sharp. Something that makes you feel like you're not alone, even when you absolutely should be. This happened about 3 years ago in a small house I rented just outside the city. It was an old place, cheap, a little rundown, creaky floors, pipes that made noises at night. The kind of house that had a personality, or at least that's what I joked to friends. But after that night, I realized the house wasn't the one making the noises. Someone else was. It was around midnight. I wasn't asleep yet, just lying in bed scrolling through messages, the room lit only by the dim phone screen. My bedroom window faced the backyard. The yard itself stretched a good 30 feet before ending at a tall wooden fence lined with trees behind it. No neighbors back there. No lights. Just blackness. Out of nowhere, I heard something. A faint tap. I ignored it at first. Old house, old noises. Maybe a bug hit the glass. Maybe nothing. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Soft. Rhythmic. Intentional. I lowered my phone and listened. The tapping was definitely coming from my bedroom window. A cold feeling rolled down my spine. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a branch? Maybe the wind? But then, the tapping changed. It turned into scraping. A slow, deliberate dragging sound, like nails sliding across the glass with pressure. That's when I sat up. The blinds were down, so I couldn't see anything outside. And something deep in my gut, some primal instinct told me not to lift them. Not even a little. I stood up slowly, the room feeling suddenly colder. The scraping continued, long and uneven, almost like someone testing the surface. Testing the window. Testing the barrier between me and them. I reached toward the blind cord, but stopped myself inches from touching it. Something told me if I opened them, whatever was on the other side would be looking directly at me. Instead, I walked over to the light switch and flicked the lamp off. The instant the room went dark, the scraping stopped. Like it knew. I stood there holding my breath, eyes straining in the darkness. For several seconds, there was silence. And then, the blinds began to bend inward. Someone was pushing on them from the other side. Slowly, gently, testing the room. I stepped backward, my heartbeat pounding so hard I could feel in my neck. Then I heard it. A whisper. Low. Breathy. Right outside the glass. Open it. I froze. My entire body felt like it had turned to ice. The whisper came again, a little louder this time. Open, please. But the voice didn't sound human. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't scared. It sounded like someone trying to sound human, like a recording played the wrong way. Hollow. Shaky. Wrong. I backed farther away from the window until I bumped into the edge of my bed. The whispering turned into a soft scratching again, and then something hit the window. Hard. The glass rattled in the frame. Not enough to break, but enough to tell me whatever was out there had strength. Real strength. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but before I could even dial the number, a long, Pale hands slid underneath the blinds. Not from the side, not from above, from the bottom edge, as if the person was bent unnaturally low to the ground. The fingers were far too long, thin, bony things that bent at odd angles like multiple joints were out of place. The nails were dirty, cracked, maybe even torn. The skin looked wrinkled and waterlogged, like it had been soaking in cold water for hours. The hand tapped the glass from the inside of the blinds, like it was trying to feel the room, trying to find a way in. My breath hitched. I try not to scream, not even make a sound. My instincts told me noise would only make it more interested. The hand slid across the bottom of the window, tapping, scraping, pressing, testing every edge. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hit the numbers on my phone. 911 picked up and I could barely get the words out. There, someone at my W window, trying to get inside. The operator kept asking questions, but I was too terrified to answer half of them. The whole time, I waited for the sound of breaking glass, the sound of footsteps inside the house. 10 minutes felt like a lifetime. When the police finally arrived, 2 officers walked around the yard with flashlights while I waited by the front door, shaking. After a few minutes, one of the officers came over to me. "We didn't find anyone," he said. "No signs of forced entry." I told him to look at the bedroom window. Really look. Both officers walked over, lights scanning the ground. That's when they found them. Footprints. Bare footprints. Leading up to the window. But the strange part? They were facing the house. Not away from it. As if whoever was there had been standing completely still, watching my window for a long time. The officers knelt down, comparing the prints. Even in the beam of their flashlights, I could see something was wrong. The feet were long, too long. The toes were spaced strangely. And the prints were deeper at the toes than the heel, like the person had been leaning forward unnaturally. When they measured the prints, they came out to nearly 14 inches long. Probably a prank, one officer said, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. But then I showed them the inside of my window. I slid the blinds up with shaking hands. Near the bottom corner of the window, scratched into the glass, were small marks. Tiny arcs and lines where nails had scraped against it. From the inside, the officers' faces changed when they saw that. They insisted I stay somewhere else for the night. They said they'd patrol the area until sunrise. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. I stayed at a friend's place, lying awake, replaying everything in my mind. The hand, the whisper, the blinds bending inward. The next morning, I drove back to the house to gather my things. In the daylight, the footprints outside looked even clearer, even more wrong, like they belonged to something pretending to be human. Something tall, something patient, and something that had stood completely still outside my window long before it ever tapped. Inside the room, I noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. On the windowsill was a small wet smear, like someone with damp fingers had touched it. I moved out 3 days later. I didn't even finish the lease. I didn't care about the deposit. I just wanted to leave that house behind forever. And even now, years later, whenever I hear tapping on a window, branch, rain, anything, I freeze, because I know what a real tapping sounds like. Slow, rhythmic, deliberate, the kind that's followed by a whisper that still echoes in my head. Open it.